Well, I've made no secret of it here on the Aussie Wire that I'm thrilled to see that Javier Milei, the newly inaugurated Argentinian president, was indeed the winner of their last election. He came into that election promising some very, very big changes, the like of which we really haven't seen in any country in my lifetime. So I was very, very excited and very curious to see, A, whether he was going to be able to actually pull off any of those changes, and B, whether they were going to have the effect that I believe, and he clearly believes they would have, which would be a very, very positive effect. Well, of course, there is no substitute for reality. We can have all the ideas we want, but we need to have a look at what's going on in reality and measure what we believe based on how well it actually works. And Javier Milei gives us a wonderful opportunity to do exactly that. Well, someone who is no stranger to the Aussie Wire was actually there at the inauguration, took the time to travel across, and that is none other than the Honourable John Ruddick MLC, and he joins us right now on the Aussie Wire. John, thank you so much.
Great to see you, Topher. Happy New Year.
And to you too. Now, you actually took the time to travel across to Argentina. Now, you are a Libertarian MP, and Javier Milei is a completely unrelated Libertarian party, of course. There's no relationship between the parties, but obviously there's a relationship in terms of the worldviews and the outlooks. What was it that made you decide you wanted to actually be there in person?
Well, look, I've been sort of following Javier Milei for about a year. Okay, when he was this long shot candidate for president. He'd only got into Congress, I think, two or 4 years ago, but prior to that, he'd been an academic, made a lot of YouTube videos about radical libertarianism. So I thought, look, this guy's fantastic. So we were very excited. Libertarians all around the world were very, very excited when he got elected. I was one of about 300 international guests that they kindly invited to go over to be part of the inauguration, the official ceremonies, and met a lot of other people, basically from mainly from Latin America. Look, the key thing I'd like to say on my return, Topher, is this. Buenos Aires, their capital city, you walk around the place, it is very, very clear this was once a very wealthy country. I would say more so than Sydney or Melbourne, okay?
Yeah, right.
The architecture, I mean, I've read in the paper and in books that in the 1940s, Argentina was the wealthiest country on earth. I now believe it. Okay, the streets are beautiful boulevards. The architecture is twice as grand as the best thing in Collins Street or Martin Place in Sydney. Okay, but look, that was a long time ago. And somebody asked me when I came back, said, John, what's it like? I said, look, I'll tell you what Argentina's like. Imagine if Gough Whitlam ran Australia, not for 3 years, but for 60 years. 60 years of Gough Whitlamism. That is basic. Look, they say that they were socialists over there in Argentina. Look, they weren't communists, okay? They were democratic socialists. They did keep having elections. Well, there were a few dictatorships, okay? Not for long, not for long.
Yeah.
It's basically been a democracy, and the people have basically voted for a very big government, okay? And now the place which was booming in the it was booming for 100 years before the 1940s, okay, because they basically had a government which was consciously, we want to be a really, really small government, and we want to let in foreign investment, and we want to let in ambitious migrants, and the place was magnificent. And now it's gone to hell. The place is in decay. So I'm looking at it now, and I'm thinking, look, Javier Milei, who we all love on the Aussie Wire, he's got one hell of a job, Topher, but if anyone on the earth can turn it around, it is Javier Milei.
Well, I'll tell you what, everything that you're saying resonates with me very strongly after the week that I spent in Caracas, of course, Venezuela. I was there in 2015 with my wife, and we noticed the exact same thing. It was striking how obvious it was that they had money, and also simultaneously the amount of decay and misery that we were surrounded by. And the juxtaposition becomes really quite painful to actually watch. There's this beautiful architecture, and then there's a line of people hoping to get butter from the supermarket today. We're hoping we'll be able to afford the butter when we get in there and find out what the price is. It's just absolute madness. Coming to Javier Milei, though, he came into the presidency having made some pretty big claims about what it was that he was going to do. The proof is always in the pudding. We've seen election after election where someone gets elected and then fails to even try and deliver on the things that they've promised. How would you score Javier Milei so far? It's very early days, but nevertheless, how has he gotten started?
Look, he gets a 10 out of 10 from me so far, Topher. Now, you remember about a year and a half ago, we had a British Prime Minister, Liz Truss, for about sort of 3 or 4 weeks. She came in on an agenda. She was elected by the Conservative membership. She came in on an agenda of bringing about some sort of Thatcherite style economic reforms. She tried, there was pushback, she collapsed.
Yeah.
Okay. Now Milei is not Liz Truss. Milei is absolutely an ideologue who happens to be a politician.
Right.
He is not a politician who's got a few ideas.
Yeah.
So he is going full steam ahead. He's doing magnificent things, and he's only got about 20% of the Congress.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's not as bad as it sounds, because look, he won 56% of the popular vote. That is a landslide in anybody's book. So that gives him a lot of political capital. And those people in Congress, they all want to get re-elected because they are politicians, right? If they go against this very popular president, it's going to hurt them. So I think he will have I think he'll have more cooperation from the Congress than we expect. But then in 2 years' time, there's new congressional elections.
Yeah.
So this is the major challenge, Tova. You know, when Reagan and Thatcher, and they were very mild little pussycats compared to Milei, okay?
Yeah.
But they were great figures. When Reagan and Thatcher first got elected, they brought in some very good economic reforms, not as good as Milei, but very good. And both the US and the UK went into a 2-year nasty little recession.
Yeah.
Okay. And Reagan and Thatcher's polling was pretty bad after about 18 months.
Yeah.
Okay. But what they were doing is they were giving a sick patient, the economy, tough medicine. Okay. And that recession was good. Okay. It meant that the US and the UK could then rebound with strength. They got inflation under control, et cetera, et cetera. And then basically the US and the UK had 30 good years after that. Thank you, Reagan and Thatcher.
Yeah.
But the key thing is a 2-year recession when you've got a sick patient. Now, Argentina's more sick than the US and the UK ever were.
Yeah.
And he's now bringing this tough medicine. So this is my prediction, Topher. For the next 18 months, 2 years, the economic indicators in Argentina are going to go down. There will probably be increased unemployment. There will probably be increased, other bad things, okay? But the inflation will come down. That's the thing they've got to kill. That's what he's working on. So, yes, he gets a 10 out of 10 from me so far.
Well, he certainly gets an A for effort from me. I don't necessarily share your optimism regarding cooperation from the Congress. That is, of course, a challenge in anyone that has that kind of presidential style of government. The president can say what he likes. He's got the bully pulpit there. But if he doesn't have the numbers in Congress, which, unlike our system, where if you're the prime minister, inherently you do have the numbers, at least in the lower house, in their system, you can have 20% of Congress and still be the president if you happen to win the popular vote. That's the situation he finds himself in. I want to get to some specific policies that he has been working on. Whether they're successful or not remains to be seen. This particular one here was reported on by Joey Manorino in the US. Now, this is something that I find quite interesting here. It's almost a bit petty. There's an element of me that feels like this is a bit petty and yet also very significant at the same time. What he's done here, John, is he's actually made a rule that says that government departments cannot use the word free in reference to anything that is taxpayer funded. Now, this ruffled some feathers. There was some of my haters were quite upset about my support for this, saying, I thought you were all in favour of free speech. What are your thoughts on this? Is this something we could possibly learn from and copy here?
I absolutely love it. This is one of the things Milei has done, since he got inaugurated, which I think is one of the best things. Now, you are right that at face value, it looks like a little petty, little semantics thing, okay, just changing a word. But it just shows us how much of an ideologue, how much of a true believer Milei is. He's told the public service in Argentina, look, you cannot use the word free for services. And it's brilliant. It just shows you how much he really wants to change the culture of the Argentinian people. So what he's saying is, look, you might get something, it's free for you, but somebody else has paid for it.
Yeah.
And I think this is just magnificent. This shows you why he's on track to be a more significant figure than Reagan and Thatcher, because he's getting down into the nitty-gritty. He wants to change how people think. And look, the poor old Argentinian people, I can tell you, look, they walk around the streets. I was right in the guts of Buenos Aires, right in the heart of the political district and the business district. Okay, I can tell you the people walk around. I've got to say, Tova, and I'm sorry to say this, there is a bit of sort of dejection about them. Okay, it almost reminded me when I went to Eastern Europe in or East Germany in about a decade after the Berlin Wall came down. I thought, look, these people are still, socialism really sort of takes the spirit out of people.
Yeah.
So I love what Milei has done, saying to government departments, no, you cannot refer to government programs as free stuff for people. I love it, Topher.
Well, it's interesting because in the private sector, if I were to advertise something as free and sort of be manipulating language in that way, I'd be liable to end up for violations of various trade practices acts and so forth for having sort of misrepresented my product or how it gets paid for. So I find it interesting, and to me, I see it more as bringing the government into line with the public sector. The other big thing that we've seen come out is a 350 different program cut to various socialist kind of programs within Argentina. It's quite astonishing to think that there are 350 in the first place. But if we took a step back, there'd have to be at least that many or more just here in Australia, wouldn't there?
Oh, there would be. Now, you remember we had the Liberal Party came to power in 2013 in this country, and they made a big song and dance about how they were going to get rid of regulations that are holding back the economy. And Josh Frydenberg made I think he was the Minister for Deregulation. Now they put on press conferences and they did a few little stunts about, oh, we're getting rid of all this, we're getting it.
Yeah.
Okay, but they went through all the statute books and they just found a ton of old regulations that have just become redundant. No one pays it. Might have been some banana importation statute from 1942. Okay, and they just thought, look, it's completely superfluous now, so we'll say we're getting rid of it. It was all garbage. Okay, because in fact that government brought in more regulations than any other government in history. Okay, they financial services, and your wife would know about that. In everything else, okay, they brought in a ton of regulation. Now Malay's here, and yes, he's used his executive order. It's very similar to the US presidency, the Argentinian presidency. So they do have a bit of executive power. Congress has got the guts of the power. But yes, he's gone through it. He's identified 350 programs that he can just say, no, sorry, we're not doing it anymore. Now, this is shock therapy, okay? People are going to get upset about it. There are already protests in the streets. But the great thing about Javier Milei is, being an ideologue and not a politician, is he cares about his ideas being implemented, and he doesn't really think that much about getting re-elected, okay?
Yeah.
What a beautiful man.
Yeah. Well, look, when someone like that comes to power and pushes things in the right direction, it's great. But we would decry exactly the same thing about someone who was perhaps coming in with very strongly socialist or communistic ideas. We would decry the ideologue in them under those circumstances. So I have some caution about me there. But I do agree with this particular cut of 350 different programs because it is coming from essentially an executive order. It is essentially it's within his wheelhouse to be able to do that. And so he is. We continue the coverage here. Argentina's newly elected president has signed a necessity and urgency decree and basically just said this is such an emergency. Coming back to what you were saying earlier there, John, this is such an emergency. This is such a dire situation that we have to take the tough medicine. Do you think the popular support for him will hold? Has he prepared people enough for that shock therapy?
Okay, well, that is the critical question. Okay, no doubt about it, because there have been other Latin American leaders in the last sort of 20, 30 years who have tried with what we might call Milton Friedmanism, and they've sort of backed away from it. Okay, that has happened now. He's got 56% of the vote. That's great. Now, what he's also got is that he is an extremely charismatic figure, putting aside his politics, with the chainsaw and the beautiful women and the crazy hair, okay, and just the theatrics, okay. He's extremely charismatic. So this is what it all comes down to. They've got congressional elections in 2 years' time. Malay's got his party now, like the Libertarian Party or something. Sure. Okay, now he's going to bring in the tough tasting medicine. He's already doing it. He's not mucking around. So in 2 years' time, when we have the congressional elections in Argentina, is Milei's party going to have a surge in support? Or are the Argentinian people going to say, oh, Mr. Milei, we liked you, but we don't like your policies. My life's become more unhappy since you got elected.
Yeah.
That's the critical moment in 2 years' time, the congressional elections. If anyone can hold it together, okay, I think it is Milei because of the force of his personality. Okay, but that is not a certainty. He might have a swing against him in 2 years' time. Yeah. Okay, well then,
Yeah, we'll have
Won't
to wait.
be good.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. And I do hope that he maintains support, because I do hope to see that some of these ideas making their way across the ocean to Australia. Last question for you, John, before I let you go. Donald Trump must be looking at this with some interest. There have been some interactions on Twitter. He's congratulated Milei on Twitter. We know that he's at the very least aware of Milei and aware of where he stands on so many issues. Would Donald Trump be looking at this, do you think, wondering what might have happened if he'd gone harder about cutting down the alphabet agencies and delivering on some of the things that he said he was going to do prior to the presidency, but then he was yet another in a long list of people who kind of came in a lot more softly than what the rhetoric would have suggested?
Well, there's no doubt that Trump did underperform when he talked about draining the swamp. The truth is, he was a businessman who had barely ever been to Washington, D.C. in his life.
Yeah.
Now, he gets elected. He was new to Washington, and he basically had the GOP establishment choose. The president gets to appoint about 300 people, not just his staff, but and in very important positions. And he basically just sort of went along with what the GOP establishment said. Oh, you should appoint this person, you should appoint this person. Now, 80% of the appointments turned out to be snakes trying to undermine him.
Yeah.
Now, so I'm pro-Trump. Okay, I like Trump a lot. Okay, Trump is more than Trump. Trump's now a symbol of the resistance
Very much
to wokeism, in my view. Okay, so, but look, Trump is not a libertarian. Okay, no. So he doesn't have libertarian instincts. Trump thinks left-wing governments are bad. So how do we counter that? We have a big, powerful right-wing government. Okay, so now I hope he gets re-elected, Mr. Trump. But look, Mr. Trump's got to learn from Mr. Milei, okay, about how to really turn things around. And so they do like each other, and they have had Milei has said for months that he's pro-Trump, okay. Now, I think he's pro-Trump Trump's policies were in the right direction. He cut company tax from 35 to about 20%, which was fantastic, which made the American economy boom, particularly for low-income earners, because they got jobs. But look, they like each other, but I think they sort of like each other because they were both sort of, battling the same evil empire.
They're both outsiders.
So I think they're outsiders, that they like each other. They're highly charismatic. I can't wait till this will be if Trump and Milei, if Trump can get re-elected, Trump and Milei can have a summit. Now, that'll be one to keep an eye on, Topher.
Well, you mentioned that Trump needs to learn from Milei. I'd suggest that Trump probably needs to learn from Trump and learn a few lessons from that first 4 years, and perhaps 4 years on the bench may prove to be the best thing that could have happened once it all comes out in the wash and we see how history unfolds. Well, John Ruddick, thank you so much. You're a friend of the show. We do appreciate you coming on, giving us your thoughts, and as we keep an eye on world events, we'll continue to follow the developments in Argentina as and when they happen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Perfect. Thanks for having us, Topher.